Last month, I also took an action endorsed unanimously by the U.S. Senate just months before. I recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Donald Trump, the former leader, just revealed something astonishing about Jerusalem. It's got everyone talking and wondering if it's a sign of the end times. But hold on, let's break it down together. Could this old city really hold the key to something huge? Is there some kind of big plan unfolding right before our eyes? Stick around because we're getting deep into this prophecy. On December 6, 2017, the United States officially said Jerusalem is the capital city of Israel. This means they see it as Israel's main city. Former President Donald Trump made this official, and he also said the American embassy would move there from Tel Aviv. This made the embassy of the United States in Jerusalem. Benjamin Netanyahu liked this decision a lot and said good things about it. But America's Secretary of State Rex Tillerson made it clear that this didn't decide everything about Jerusalem. He said the borders and other important things would still be talked about by both Israel and Palestine. Most countries and leaders around the world didn't agree with Trump's decision. They thought it was a bad idea. The United Nations Security Council talked about it, and most of the members didn't like it either. But America has a special power called a veto, so they stopped the Security Council from doing anything about it. Countries like the United Kingdom, France, Japan, Italy, and Sweden said Trump's decision was wrong. However, some countries supported America's move. Guatemala said they would also move their embassy to Jerusalem. Other countries like the Czech Republic, Honduras, Paraguay, and Romania said they were thinking about doing the same thing. In Europe, Federica Mogherini, who helps with foreign policy for the European Union, EU, said all EU countries agreed that East Jerusalem should belong to Palestine if they become independent. For supporters of Trump, it was a moment of triumph, a fulfillment of his promise that seemed bold at the time. For others, it was a controversial move viewed as disrupting the balance of peace negotiations in the Middle East. In the years that followed, Jerusalem remained a focal point of global attention. Jerusalem has been at the center of conflicts involving three major religions: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. This ancient city has been in the news lately due to the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. Its name is equally significant to Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Scholars believe the first human settlements in Jerusalem date back to around 3,500 BC during the early Bronze Age. Around 1000 BC, King David conquered Jerusalem, making it the capital of the Jewish kingdom. His son Solomon built the first temple, which became renowned for housing the Holy Ark of the Covenant. However, the Babylonians destroyed this temple in 586 BC, leading to the exile of Jews from Jerusalem. About 50 years later, the Persian king Cyrus allowed Jews to return and rebuild their temple. Over time, Jerusalem was occupied by various groups, including Romans, Persians, Arabs, Crusaders, and Muslims. Temple Mount, an area on a hill in Jerusalem, holds religious importance for all three religions. It includes the Western Wall, the Dome of the Rock, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. For Jews, it is the holiest place, believed to be where Abraham was ready to sacrifice his son Isaac. The Dome of the Rock is considered by Muslims as the place from which Prophet Muhammad raised to heaven. The Western Wall, managed by the Rabbi of the Western Wall, is the closest spot where Jews can pray to the Holy of Holies. Temple Mount is also important for Christians, mentioned in both the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Christian area is believed to be where Jesus was crucified and resurrected. Despite its religious importance, Jerusalem has been filled with tension and conflict. Jews can't pray openly at the Western Wall, leading to frustration among Palestinians. This ongoing argument attracts radical groups, making it hard to find a solution. Simply put, Jerusalem is an ancient city important to Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So when Trump said something big was going to happen in Jerusalem, it got everyone talking. Some people were really excited and thought it meant something amazing was going to happen. They thought it was a sign that their religious beliefs were true, but not everyone believed Trump. Some thought he was just saying it to get attention. They pointed out that Trump often said controversial things and they didn't trust him. This entire thing caused a lot of arguments and discussions among different groups of people. Christians, Jews, and Muslims all had different ideas about what Trump's prophecy meant. Some thought it was a sign that the end of the world was near, while others were more cautious and didn't want to get too excited. The media also got involved and talked a lot about Trump's prophecy. They looked at everything he said and tried to understand what he meant. People on social media were also discussing it a lot, sharing their thoughts and guesses. A few days ago, some scientists in Jerusalem discovered something amazing buried deep under the old streets. Perhaps they found a hidden room full of old things like shiny rocks, old papers, and strange objects. These papers had secrets written on them from a long time ago. One of these secrets sounded a lot like something Donald Trump said once. It talked about Jerusalem becoming the capital of Israel forever. When people heard about this, they got excited. They thought maybe it was time for this old idea to come true. But finding these old papers did more than just start arguments. It made people curious about Jerusalem's past. They wanted to know more about its history and why it was so special. As more people visited Jerusalem, it became a busy place with lots of tourists. They came to see the old places and learn about the city's past. However, even with all the excitement, Jerusalem still had problems. People still argued about who should control the city, but the idea coming true reminded everyone that words and beliefs can be very strong. About 4,000 years ago, God made a promise to Abraham that his family would get some land, which includes modern-day Israel. However, because of different things that happened in history, including the Jewish people not believing in Jesus, they had to leave this land for almost 2,000 years. In 1948, Israel became a country, which was an important part of what God promised a long time ago. Israel became a nation again, but their neighbors didn't like it. Over time, a few peace agreements were made, but many Arab countries still refused to accept Israel's right to exist. Then, in 2020, something remarkable happened. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain surprised the world by agreeing to make peace with Israel. This was called the Abraham Accords, signed on the White House lawn. Now, why is this important? Well, there's a prophecy in the Bible that talks about a peace deal between Israelis and Palestinians 7 years before some major events, including the return of Jesus. This prophecy is in the book of Daniel. Some people see a link between the Abraham Accords and this prophecy, because the Accords recognize Israel's right to exist in the land promised to Abraham. Some believe that the signing of these accords could mark the start of a final 7-year period mentioned in prophecy. Now there's talk about the Antichrist, a figure from biblical prophecy. But according to the Bible, the Antichrist is expected to come from Europe. So it's unlikely that any current world leader like former President Trump could be the Antichrist. In the peace process between Israelis and Palestinians, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas wants negotiations to be led by the international community, specifically by a group called the Middle East Quartet, which includes the UN, EU, Russia, and the United States. If this happens, it could play a significant role in fulfilling biblical prophecy. But let's not get too caught up in guessing who the Antichrist is. Instead, let's focus on understanding and fulfilling prophecies. The signing of the Abraham Accords is seen as a significant event in this context. Jerusalem is a city with a long history, often mentioned in biblical texts. Despite being destroyed many times, Jerusalem was always rebuilt. This was because of a promise made by Jehovah in the Garden of Eden regarding the coming of the Messiah. The Jews who believed in Jehovah's promises knew that Jerusalem wouldn't remain empty forever. They had faith in Jeremiah's prediction, which said Jerusalem would be empty for 70 years. They also knew from Isaiah's prophecy that Jerusalem would be restored and become beautiful when the Messiah came. Despite the difficulties, the survival of key figures like Jehoash and Jeos showed them that God was keeping the kingly and priestly lines. They saw this as a sign of hope, knowing that God was preparing for their return to rebuild Jerusalem. In a special prophecy in Daniel 9:25, the angel Gabriel predicted when the Messiah would arrive in Jerusalem. He mentioned the importance of a decree to rebuild Jerusalem before the Messiah's arrival. This decree was made by King Xerxes of Persia in 444 BC, allowing Nehemiah to rebuild Jerusalem. The temple had already been rebuilt earlier under Zerubbabel. From the time this decree was made until the Messiah arrived, there would be a specific time frame. This decree marked the start of the countdown to the Messiah's arrival, giving hope to the Jewish people. In Daniel's prophecy, a specific time frame is mentioned. It says there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, totaling 483 years, from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem in 444 BC to the time of Christ. The rebuilding of Jerusalem was finished in 395 BC, completing the first 7 weeks. Then, 62 weeks later, after 483 years, Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah, entered Jerusalem. To understand the exact timing, we need to consider the difference in the length of the Jewish year, which was 360 days. When we convert the years to days and count down from 444 BC, we reach March 30th, AD 33, the day celebrated as Palm Sunday when Jesus entered Jerusalem. The coming back of the Jews to Jerusalem started with the order of Cyrus, the Persian ruler of Babylon, in 536 BC. However, they met resistance, especially from the Samaritans, who disrupted the reconstruction of the temple. Despite challenges and fear, the prophets Haggai and Zechariah motivated the Jews to restart building, leading to the finishing of the temple during Darius's reign, 15 years after its foundation was laid. Prophets like Haggai and Zechariah also urged the Jews to keep rebuilding despite opposition from Persian-appointed officials, reminding everyone of Cyrus's order to rebuild the temple. Scholars have debated whether it was Cyrus or someone else mentioned in Daniel 9:25 who issued this order, with some pointing to Cyrus's predictions in Isaiah 44:45. The prophet Isaiah predicted about Cyrus, a king chosen by the Lord to fulfill his plans. Isaiah mentioned that Cyrus would reconstruct Jerusalem and allow the Jewish exiles to return home without asking for any payment. This prediction is found in Isaiah 44 and 45. Cyrus's order to reconstruct Jerusalem is also mentioned in the Bible, particularly in Ezra 1, 2, 4. In this order, Cyrus acknowledged that the Lord God of heaven had instructed him to build a house in Jerusalem. He directed the Jewish exiles to go back to Jerusalem and reconstruct the temple of the Lord. Trump's words about Jerusalem made people talk. Some thought they connected to old predictions, while others worried about problems. It got everyone thinking about how religion, politics, and the world mix. It made us look back at old predictions and wonder what they mean now. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe for more.